Welcome to Strictly Business Unscripted. I'm your host, Keandra Jones, here to provide the ultimate networking hub and exclusive peek into the lives of thriving entrepreneurs and business owners. This podcast will educate, ignite inspiration, foster encouragement, and pave the way for our small businesses and overall Oak Cliff community. First, we'd like to thank our sponsors, HCN, Breakfast Brothers, Serve Pro, and the Dallas Zoo. We sincerely appreciate your support. Now today we've got an amazing show that's themed the City of Dallas's digital kiosks. Who really wants them? We are honored to have the City of Dallas's Public Works Director here to share some information about what they are proposing in terms of their digital kiosks.
Hello, Ali Hatafi, Director of Public Works, City of Dallas. The City of Dallas is trying to bring a vendor to implement a digital kiosk. These are the interactive digital kiosks for the city, and we believe that this is more in line with the smart city initiatives that are happening around the world and in the US. And many cities have implemented these interactive digital kiosks already. And these kiosks can provide many benefits to the residents, such as free Wi-Fi for underserved area of the town that they don't have any local Wi-Fi, and also implementing a lot of data, such as gathering the data for air pollution and the camera and safety for public. Thank you.
In 1995, Dave Spence founded Good Space, a real estate company that renovates then operates buildings in and around Dallas's historic Bishop Arts District. Trained in law and business, Spence has served on Dallas's Zoning Commission and Board of Adjustments. He has participated in most every urban planning initiative affecting North Oak Cliff during the last 25 years. He sometimes comments on City Hall in the local press. But he and his wife, Cindy, have raised 2 children in Oak Cliff. He is a past board member of the Oak Cliff Chamber of Commerce, and he is proud to have once received the Chamber's Bill McCaleb Award for Civic Engagement. So we are so honored to have the wonderful and legendary Mr. David Spence. Thank you so much for being with us today. We're going to jump right into things today. We want to know, what is a digital kiosk? And what does the Dallas City Hall, why do they even want them?
Imagine a 6-foot tall cell phone.
Okay.
With 2 sides. And that's pretty much what they look like. There are, if you Google digital kiosk Dallas, there are lots of examples from other cities. So you can get a sense of it. And I am the last person to confer with about technological matters, but apparently these things will have a touch screen component.
Okay.
And I don't need to explain that.
Right.
In other words, they would be interactive. Otherwise, instead of being just a dumb sign. The harder question is why City Hall wants them. Well, maybe that's an easy question. I strongly suspect it's money. It's money. At last week's information session that Councilman Chad West hosted at the Oak Cliff Cultural Center, the Director of Public Works, Mr. Ali Hatafi, said a few times that we have a backlog of $16 billion in infrastructure needs, facilities and infrastructure needs. And he later clarified that a little more than $8 billion of that is just streets and transportation. So I would say City Hall is trying to figure out how to pay for that.
Right. Okay. So for someone who might feel strongly about this issue, where exactly is City Hall in its deliberations?
This is very different than the initiatives that I usually come across. Like, take for example a zoning case where there's public input, and or another case. Right now, we're considering doing a skate park in West Oak Cliff, and there have been community meetings about that. Other than the rather hastily convened information session that Councilman West hosted last week, which I heard about 5 minutes before it happened, that I know of, there are only 2 opportunities to comment on this. One has already passed. It was a 1-hour virtual, i.e. online meeting on April 22nd.
Okay.
That's passed. So that I know of, the only remaining opportunity for people to weigh in is, again, a 60-minute session that has been set aside at City Hall this coming Monday, April 29th, from 6 to 7 p.m. in room L1FM of City Hall. And you can, if you Google digital kiosks, City of Dallas, you can go to a sign-up sheet, although today is the last day to sign up, for one of the coveted 60-second spots to speak and ask questions.
Oh, wow.
So, you've been around long enough to know that's an unusually abbreviated opportunity for input. And I can't say I blame city staff. These things keep them away from home after hours. They're typically don't prepare. They typically are more venting sessions than any new information. Right. So I understand that. But that, for me, that's a big flag, is that we are straying from the usual input process.
Okay. So you mentioned the info session last week that Councilmember Chad West had, and also the Director of Public Works was there. During that meeting, now I know you weren't feeling well that particular day, but you voiced very strong opposition to these digital kiosks.
Yeah, I checked my fever this morning, and I do not have a fever, so I will try not to rant.
I'm happy to.
Like
You're better. You're better.
That meeting.
Well, no, it was a great meeting, very spirited. But why don't you like the idea of these kiosks?
I don't like the idea for a number of reasons. Some of them conceptual, and some of them practical.
Okay.
For one, does City Hall, much less the Department of Public Works, belong in the advertising business?
Okay.
Okay. How well does it go when the city strays, for example, in the business of running an airport? Do we really do that well? How well do we have we gotten into the housing business? What kind of a bang for their buck do taxpayers get when it comes to the city sponsoring and building affordable housing? Government is just terrible at when it strays into disciplines that are usually part of the private sector. So I don't like it for that reason. I just don't, it's like, that's not going to end well. City Hall is telling us, Public Works is actually telling us, we're going to get something for nothing. Okay? We're going to say, they will tell you, as they did at the last public hearing, is we're not putting out any money for this. All we do is host these things. Okay, now, anyone in business, or for that matter, life outside City Hall, knows that there is no free lunch. You don't get anything for free.
Right.
Okay? So what that makes me ask is, okay, if the city is going to collect however many millions in fees, what are we giving up? What is the quid pro quo? Now, it might be that the contract is written that, well, the city hall doesn't take care of these things. But taxpayers, listeners, ask yourselves, what are the costs of this? Because there are always costs. You never get something for nothing. It was brought up by a restaurateur in the Bishop Arts District and head of that area's Merchants Association. You know, his objection was the visual and light pollution. And he had a very good example. He said, you know, the eclipse 2 weeks before was a magical moment. Yeah. And he said, you know, what if we had been sitting at a sidewalk cafe and everything had gone dark and one of these kiosks had been next to us? You know. So, but my main objections, my main fears, what I do for a living is renovate distressed, charming old buildings in and around the Bishop Arts District. And then I hold on to them. Maybe to an unusual extent, I am involved in their maintenance for a landlord. And I also take care of a lot of the right-of-way in Bishop Arts. Good Space, under the Momentum program, takes care of a couple of medians, a traffic circle, but I'm always washing graffiti off park benches. And so I have no illusion about what kind of punishment these things will take. Right. And this same restaurateur, the light pollution guy, pointed out that in his nice restaurant, it's not a rowdy bar, he cannot keep people from scratching the mirrors in the bathrooms. He just has to regularly replace them. And there is something about these screens, I think, that is going to invite vandalism. And you know, when was the last time you pulled up to the gas pump at a Shell station and the little screen that you needed to do business with was in any kind of shape to read it? You have to hold your hand because it's bleached and it's scratched and there are obscenities painted on it. Right. You know, these things, and that's private property. Right. My concern is that we have a piece of public art in the Bishop Arts District which has been subject to vandalism and decay, and no one fixes it. Of course, it's completely off the city's radar and budget to do anything about it. But it's in a spot that no one owns. Whereas there are other art gestures in the Bishop Arts District, namely murals, that are on private property, and that when they do get vandalized, they're fixed, and they're hardly vandalized. So there is something about a vulnerable object sitting in the middle of the right-of-way that invites people to mess with it. And it might not be intentional. For example, one example we have for this is the circa 2005 or so kiosk, kind of an analog kiosk, you might call it, just a lighted kiosk that is at more or less at the corner of Fort Worth Avenue and Hampton. And that was subject to a vehicle collision many years. I can't remember when it wasn't undamaged, and at least 1/3 of it is inoperable, and it's leaning like the Leaning Tower of Pisa. And people get drunk and get distracted and run over things that are planted on the sidewalk. And I have very little faith in a remote advertising company to make any kind of timely repairs on that. So yes, these things will look great. They'll be dazzling the first week that they're there. But how will they look after 2 weeks, after 2 years? And the other thing is they're, by definition, because they're cutting edge technology, they're going to be obsolete. And so it's not going to be a testament to the cutting edge nature of our city to plant all this old technology on our sidewalks. It's not even needed now. All of the functions of this are contained in the cell phone in your pocket right now. It's no accident this thing looks like a giant. Anyway, I should pause, let you get another question in. But yeah, I think I have conceptual problems with it, and then I have practical problems with it.
Understandable. So I went into the community meeting personally having one opinion, and then after having heard your position, I must admit it caused me to think quite a bit about the possibilities of having these digital kiosks in our community. Now, this podcast, Strictly Business Unscripted, it focuses on the Oak Cliff community specifically. Should we in Oak Cliff feel differently about digital kiosks than other stakeholders in other parts of the city?
Well, yes and no. I am a champion of Oak Cliff, especially the Bishop Arts District. And I think we have, as an old neighborhood, still pretty much organized around the plats of 1885 in this area. Where we sit right now was platted that long ago. We have, and with old structures, we have interests that are different than the newer neighborhoods to the north. So it's legitimate to say, yes, we have special interests. At the same time, my objection is not just because of Oak Cliff, and I also think that, especially from the perspective of the Oak Cliff Chamber of Commerce, the Oak Cliff Chamber of Commerce, yes, is looking out for Oak Cliff, but we all need to be focused on the city. I mean, this is one downside of the loss of at-large seats on the district, is that the city hall has been carved into little fiefdoms, and we sometimes don't think as much as we used to about the city as a whole. So I think this is a bad deal for the city as a whole. But for Oak Cliff, forgive my skepticism about this, but I've seen this before. You know, I was going through the city has already gone out with an RFP on this. Okay, about this time last year, they issued an RFP. RFP BQZ 2300022138, and they got at least 2 responses. So that was a fully developed RFP with all of the criteria, the rubric, as they say, for that. And so while the actual responses are not available online, the RFP itself is. And one of the criteria is an equity impact assessment. And I couldn't find what that means, but and 20% of the kiosks have to be installed consistent with an equity impact assessment.
Okay.
Now, I'm going to guess that has something to do with earmarking 1/5 of these to go in places that have a certain either socioeconomic or racial profile. Okay. And that, again, the private sector advertises where it thinks it will make sales. Okay, so that is an example of the city saying, oh, you're going to do business the way government does. Never a good idea. So I imagine, and in my experience with bank branches is this, there is a we have more bank branches in the southern sector than we need, I suspect. But banks do that because of the Community Reinvestment Act, because when it comes time to sell a bank or merge or enlarge, they are judged by essentially their equity impact assessment.
Right.
And so they get ahead of that by planting a bank branch, and those bank branches very often are underperforming, understaffed. You can tell the banks don't have their heart in it. And I am concerned that the city will say, thou shalt put 20% of these kiosks in areas that you actually don't believe in. Okay? And when someone does that, how well are they going to take care of those? How much attention are they going to give to the advertising there being appropriate for that area? And my experience is that they will be forgotten. Now, they might take terrific care of the kiosk at Inwood and Lemon, just like Clear Channel's kiosk at Inwood and Lemon is great, and is advertising a Disney movie and travel services. But our Clear Channel kiosk at Hampton, same street, Inwood turns into Hampton, at Hampton and Fort Worth, got clobbered by a car years ago, and is right now advertising welfare insurance and the city's new website. And the third panel is inoperative. Wow. So I'm concerned that we're going to get the worst of these, that they'll be neglected. On the other hand, I'm concerned about what the free market will think is appropriate to advertise. If you look at, right now we're broadcasting from Jefferson, right? And if you look at the businesses on Jefferson, because Jefferson primarily serves an underbanked community and low income and low English proficiency community. Now, you have all sorts of great mom and pop restaurants and quinceañera, and marriage shops, sports shops, and things like that. But all of the non-mom and pop businesses are what I would call predatory and usurious. They are predatory lenders masquerading as check cashing, tax preparation, pawn shops. But all of those are actually just making loans at a high rate of interest. And so my concern is that, and those are not local folks. That's how Madison Avenue outside of Jefferson Boulevard that's what they think we want. That's where the money is. And so I'm concerned that these digital kiosks, they're not going to be advertising charcoal broilers, a local restaurant hours. They're not going to be advertising a quinceañera event. They're going to be advertising what Madison Avenue thinks that they can milk us for money on. And it's going to be predatory. So the idea that the city, it's one thing when a private landlord says, the hell with it, I'm going to put a pawn shop there because I know they'll pay their rent. That's one thing. When the city that is entrusted with our rights of way prostitutes out that right of way. I'm using a more polite term than I used at the other meeting. When they prostitute out our right of way to give entree to somebody who wants to take advantage of our citizens, that really pisses me off. Excuse my French. You can bleep that later.
Or not.
So as an Oak Cliff person, that's what I fear is coming.
Okay. Well, those are all valid concerns, and I appreciate that you feel very strongly about that. One of the things that we've discussed and been able to confirm is that Public Works at the City of Dallas, they are kind of leading the charge here, which is city staff, and they're usually apolitical. But since they're pushing this, does it seem to be desperate on their parts to maintain this infrastructure? And if they shouldn't even be in this business, Dave, what do you think Public Works should be doing instead?
Yeah, first of all, I just want to clarify, if I could choose one department at the city to do exclusive business with, if I could get all of my licensing, if I could get all of my certifications, if I could pay all of my bills and only do it through one department, it would be the Department of Public Works.
Okay.
I think Public Works is, in my experience, the most competent of all departments at City Hall. And though that's not a very high bar. And I have had the pleasure of knowing the last 4 directors of public works, who are typically not come and go kind of guys or persons, like some of the other departments.
Right.
So, and that includes our current director, Ali. So one thing that's curious about to me is like, why is Public Works the one who's proposing such a dumb idea? Why is that? And as an observer of City Hall and as a taxpayer, what's the message I should glean from that? And I have to assume that the guys who are in charge of fixing our pipes in our streets are really, really concerned about municipal revenue. And I would say, I would classify this as a grasping at straws. Okay, and these are guys and men and women, who are pretty top shelf, and I think excellent stewards of our rights of way and our infrastructure. So that makes me really concerned.
Right.
And this is another weird thing about this doesn't seem to be politically driven. Usually some flaky idea is the idea of some city council person who gets 4 other city council people to sign a memo and get it on the agenda, and then we're off and running. And Chad West is, I have a pretty high opinion for how he keeps on top of things. He didn't know much about this. This really has not been discussed much at the at City Council. The only thing City Council has done is last August, I think, they got 2 responses to this RFP, and for whatever reasons they said, let's wait. So they rejected it. I think that's the only vote that council has issued on this. Now, so what do you do instead? And the best thing that Public Works, the steward of our rights of way, and all the pipes below us and all the poles above us and such, can do is to promote private growth in this city. By definition, right of way abuts private property. So the best thing that the city can do is maintain the right of way, such that the businesses in the neighborhoods abutting that right of way can flourish. Okay, and I would argue that putting a kiosk that'll immediately be vandalized and that will become obsolete in 18 months is not building value. So what infrastructure, what Public Works and all of the departments of City Hall need to be focused on is building value in the rights of way. So let me give some examples of that. Number one, the one that I'm most familiar with, and the biggest one, is the Bishop Arts District itself. The City Hall spent a piddling, I think, $3.7 million inventing, branding, if you will, the Bishop Arts District in 1999. And they didn't do anything to the actual buildings themselves. All they did was pretty up and rationalize the streets and get us some more parking, and they created a place with the street trees and the benches and the paver bricks and such. And since then, the city has gotten a fabulous return on their investment. Not from fees, not from an advertising company paying to engrave a brick or whatever, but from the taxes, the sales taxes and the property taxes, and for that matter, the hotel taxes of the people, the tourists who come to the Bishop Arts District. That is what Public Works does well, and it puts the private sector in a position to do what it does well. And the two can go hand in hand. And just like it's never a good idea for me to go out and patch a pothole in my yard with, a bag of asphalt that I can get at Home Depot. Any engineer would be horrified by that. It's not a good idea for the public sector to cross over into private enterprise and advertising accounts. A couple of recent examples. Exer Capital is the developer of what you might call new Bishop Arts, which has been a huge success. And one thing they did, and I'm not going to be able to think of the Scandinavian word that the hipster developers assigned to this, but they closed the street and took it over. Okay, and I don't know, I don't recall whether they actually bought that right of way or they licensed it. But Exer Capital is now busy at work incorporating what used to be right-of-way into their business plan. And the city can do that. But the city is not going to get its return from the fee that Exer Capital paid. It gets its return by the economic activity that's generated around it. A smaller example, there's a much smaller program called the Bishop Arts District Streetscape Improvement Program, where a small-time guy like me, for $200 one-time fee, can take control of the parkway, the area between the curb and the sidewalk, so that I can incorporate that into, say, a sidewalk cafe. That, again, the city's not going to pay off its debt with a $200 fee, but it's a great investment in terms of the plates of food that I can sell on that otherwise unused right-of-way.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Dave, thank you so much for being here. We've had David Spence with Good Space that has been with us here on Strictly Business Unscripted. Next up, we've got another guest, so stay tuned. And here's a message from our sponsor, Breakfast Brothers.
I love you like la 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 la. I love you like la 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 la. I love you.
Welcome back. Strictly Business Unscripted is happy to welcome its next guest. Randall Bryant serves as the CEO of Politics United Marketing, known as PUM. Since 2012, PUM has been a leading government affairs liaison in North Texas for policy and ordinance changes. And under his leadership, PUM has managed and or supported over 50 of our region's most notable candidate campaigns and referendums on the local, state, and federal level. Randall has been featured in over 15 news publications, including the Texas Tribune, the Dallas Morning News, and the Austin American-Statesman. Randall also serves as the chair of the Dallas Black Chamber of Commerce, as well as sits on the DART board among several other boards and commissions. Okay, so welcome, Mr. Bryant. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Definitely. So we're just going to jump right into it. Tell me about the interactive kiosk in full detail and how they will function.
Sure. Well, thank you again for having me. So number one, just want to make sure everyone understands that advertising in the public right-of-way in the city of Dallas is no new concept. We've been doing it since 2006 with the original large cylindrical style kiosk that you see across our city. And so for about 20 years we've been doing this concept, but just as technology evolves, it has now hit the the kiosk program. And so about 2015, a interactive style kiosk became available to the market. We've seen about 25 cities across the country either switch from the old static style to the new interactive style, or just implement the interactive style. And so about 3 years ago, a company that I represent went to the city of Dallas. They had actually already been looking at the technology. There are other cities here in Texas that have these same concepts, the city of Houston, the city of San Antonio. And so it wasn't a new concept to the city. It aligned with their smart city goals, their Office of Innovation. And so we began looking at ways to incorporate these interactive kiosks into the footprint of our city. And so just, very quickly about them, interactive kiosks provide wayfinding and local directories for a range of services, local eateries, businesses. It points people from where they are in the city to where the most local, helpful places are. There is no elevated placement, so it's very good for local businesses, mom and pop businesses, because through our directories there can be no elevated placement by way of paying. So a lot of times when you use your phone, you use Google, you use Yelp or any of those apps, anything that has search engine optimizers that can pay for those marketing to elevate those big national retailers and companies, this product does not allow it at all. And so everything is proximal based. And so when you want to find the most local coffee shop, based upon where your proximity is, it will pull those directories up for you. There's also the ability to figure out from where you are to the next destination and then hand off all of those details, whether you need to use DART public transportation, an Uber ride, a bicycle or a scooter. It aggregates all of those different options out for you and then tells you the best way to walk around. You know, Dallas is short on bike lanes, short on wide sidewalks, and so we are trying to figure out, whether that's through Vision Zero or a lot of other measures, how to make our city more walkable. And we've seen in other markets, starting in Denver and again over 24 markets across the United States, how these interactive kiosks, you know, the interactions that they have, the data is all public in all these other cities, and the revenue generation that they create for these cities as well. Okay. And so our goal is to bring it to Dallas and for our Dallas residents, businesses, and tourists to benefit from them.
Okay, okay. Thank you for that. Now, how will these things be funded? Will there be any costs passed on to taxpayers? Let's talk about that.
Absolutely. So the way our business model is structured is that everything is at zero cost to the city.
Okay.
So the hardware of the piece itself, the continual updating of software is all done by our company in-house. It's no third parties that are involved in this process. Okay. The advertising, the continual maintenance is all done in-house by our company. And so we can control a lot of those things because we're doing it all ourselves, right? We can control the content. We can control the maintenance scheduling. Again, throughout 17 cities that we are installed in across the United States currently, we have continual maintenance 6 days a week as a standard of our business model, as well as within the original RFP that the city put out, there was a requirement for 6 days a week cleaning. Okay. And so that ensures that, and all those things are done by us. And so the city essentially will lease out its public right-of-way. And again, it's no new concept. We've been doing it, leasing out the right-of-way in the city for 20 years.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So Randall, tell me, in what ways do you believe that these interactive kiosks could contribute to Dallas's overall economic development and vitality?
Sure. So again, through local directories, number one,
okay.
And ensuring that small businesses, you know, this is, I represent a chamber, as you know, other people in this room do, mm-hmm. and so ensuring that their voices, our members, right, are you know, placed in the best positions at all times is what we do as advocates on behalf of our members and our businesses. So this product speaks exactly to that because of the local directories that it curates, right? Secondly, it's urgent messaging or emergency messaging. I remember when we actually first started this project, it was right after the Winter Storm Uri, mm-hmm. and one of the not pitches, but one of the concepts that we were showcasing at the time was, imagine back during that time when we had the winter storm and there was power out around the entire city, mm-hmm. whether you were home, you know, housed or unhoused, mm-hmm. you were suffering through, you know, the needing of resources, the needing of warming stations, the needing right. of charging stations, and you know, emergency housing, right? Mm-hmm. Imagine a network of about 150 of these across the city, pointing people directly to where resources and shelters could be in place, right? Mm-hmm. Also, the ability to promote local content. Mm-hmm. Part of our revenue model is 8 slides as a total that run as a slideshow. Mm-hmm. This is where we begin to generate our ad sales from. But one of those slides is always dedicated to the city and or local content. And we work with public improvement districts, chambers, whomever are like the most centralized stakeholders to those kiosks and ensure that whether that's local events that are happening in proximal distance to the kiosk or local art that's being created gets advertised for free on our kiosk. And so they can be a driver of local events that are happening and programmings that the city is having and or these local businesses, and any unsold of those 7 additional ad sales that we have, we donate those back to the city too. So it creates opportunities for even more city content than we actually have as part of our ad sales.
Makes sense. Okay. So right now we've got those big, large cylinder kiosks. How would the proposed interactive kiosks differ from what we already have throughout the city?
Sure. So number one, we're comparing a Polaroid to a digital camera, right? And just on the technology alone, right? Oftentimes we've seen with the older kiosk, as soon as the content goes up, it's outdated, right? The beauty about ours is through cloud-based, internet technology, we can update these in real time. And so the content alone will never be out of date because it's all, customizable specifically to the district. The shells of the kiosk are also customizable. So Bishop Arts could have something that even looked different from Jefferson. And District 1 could have something that looks different from District 3, right? So the shells, the hardware of them are completely customizable. We started ours in about 2015. We've had 3 new hardware versions, and in all the cities where version 1 was installed, they now got a version 2 and a version 3. So hardware over the past 7 years has been updated twice. The software is updated monthly, and so having the ability to implement those is very important.
Randall, how do you foresee interactive kiosks enhancing, we've spoken about this a little bit, but the overall experience for the tourist population that are exploring Dallas?
Well, we brand Dallas all the time as this world-class city, right? And so it's very important to highlight that these kiosks are multilingual. We can display everything you see on the kiosk in over 100 languages. They're also fully ADA compliant, whether that's the federal regulations on width of sidewalks, clearance on both sides, but also for those that are wheelchair bound, it's a very large in stature, right? But it can, for the ADA access, there's a icon that you can push to bring the screen down solely to someone that's wheelchair bound. As it relates to the old ones to the proposed new ones, they're about 10 feet tall, about 5 feet in circumference. Our product is about a little over 8 feet tall, 3 feet wide, 1 foot in depth. So the city is actually going to get about 85% of its volume size, its airspace and sidewalk space back, because our product is about 85% smaller in total volume size than comparison to the current kiosk. As well as there's about 500 round kiosks throughout the entire city, whereas this program starts with 75 and can go up to 150. So about a little over 3 to 4 to 1 reduction, 3 or 4 to 1 reduction in the proliferation of the kiosk across the city. 85% reduction of them in the total size, right? And so whereas we've seen a program that was deployed 20 years ago that the city thought was the best thing to do, and it's not that it wasn't, but there are better options for us now. There are better options that will declutter our city as far as how many units are installed, less of a sizable impact on the sidewalks, and increased revenue. And so those are all benefits to the city itself, to our lands, our cityscape, our sidewalks, and then the revenue impacts, and then the impacts to the business owners, the tourists. Again, we're already working with the FIFA in cities that are bringing FIFA to their city to ensure whether that's flag banners are installed or part of the displays during those times where the matches are being played, or even ensuring that the language of the home country or the two teams that are playing are elevated in the placement of that, because if people are coming to the city for, I believe, the 9 matches that we will have, right? That's 18 different countries represented, right? And so how can we ensure as a city that we are embracing and welcoming those expected international tourists, and ensuring that we have a product that's, again, multilingual, that utilizes these flag banners to create a welcoming environment for them.
Okay. So talk to me about the kinds of controls that will be put in place to protect the privacy and security of individuals who will be using these kiosks.
So there are a few features and functions that we can implement here.
Okay.
One are security cameras. That will help with not policing our areas, but providing an additional layer of information if an incident occurs. Okay. We do not, we keep the footage for about 14 days, but we do not monitor it. And anytime we've worked with cities and police departments across all the cities that we operate in, to quickly provide that information shall they need it. There's also a cute little selfie portrait that we can use with these cameras as well. In addition to that, we have emergency 911 response panic buttons on the side. Again, in these dense urban walkable areas, especially late at night, it's important that safety is number one. Right. And just also even at the late at night, just want to make sure we understand with the customization of the skins and the shells, the lights that we have, they're fully dimmable. If there are any light attractions or anything that are happening, everything is fully customizable with what our product is. And so when the directories, when you go through the directory process and you find a restaurant or a clothing store that you would like to go shop at, and it hands off that data to you, we do not store nor sell any data. All of our revenue is generated through advertisement. Okay. So there aren't any true privacy, because the cameras are only accessible to DPD shall they request them. We're not monitoring, we're not managing it. The only data collection is interactions, right? And so we report those for our financial models and to our advertisers, right, as well as to the city, so that they can keep that data. So, impressions, clicks, those are the only data that we preserve. Actual people's individual information, we do not keep that.
Okay, alrighty. So, Randall, final question for you. Are there any misconceptions that are out there that you'd just like to clear up?
Oh, wow. How much time do we have?
Okay.
I think the biggest misconception is, and that's exactly why we're probably here today. And that is, again, we approached the city a little over 3 years ago. Okay. So this isn't a rush process. Okay. We worked with a lot of stakeholder groups, and we've actually received a lot of support as well. And I think the biggest misconception is people's and individuals and groups disdain towards the old product. Number one, it's inability, it's low functionality, how the city just deployed them without stakeholder engagement, and people's fear of that that process being repeated again. Okay. And we have worked very hard from a proposed vendor. You got to understand where our position is. Okay. As we're just a proposed vendor. Okay. We don't have until we become awarded by the city true ability to enforce anything, because we may not actually get the contract. Sure. Right. Sure. And so all we can do is share with with individuals what our lessons learned have been over the past 7 years implementing these across 17 cities. I think that there's a lot of misconceptions over where we've seen the deficiencies of the current kiosks, whether that's maintenance, whether that's creative, curating the content, whether that's the overproliferation of them, in my honest opinion, whether that's not giving true adherence to sidewalk guidelines and ADA. And again, they're very well founded, but it's like we are now in a place where we are utilizing previous concerns and applying them to future possibilities. And so our goal is to try to work with as many people as we can to show them, and agree with them in most cases about what their concerns were about the old kiosks, but also share what we've done in other cities, right? Dallas is not the first city to get our specific kiosks, right? And so, I think as a rounded statement, that's really it. There are a lot of specific concerns about, they're so big. Well, these are actually smaller than the older ones, right? The content is out of date. Well, we can keep that currently on an hourly basis. The revenue portions, which we're not going to share what our closed seal bid was, but the city has been able to identify other cities and what those revenue models have been, and the potential impact, within a certain scope of how many units that they approve, what that could look like, as well as what the interactions are. So if people think that they aren't being used, you can look at actual other cities. You can actually look at other cities that we are installed in to see what our maintenance records are, to see what our interactions are, to see what our revenue that we've been providing to the cities on a quarterly basis actually is. And so I think those are kind of, and most importantly, to see how we have a track record of working with neighborhood leaders, working with stakeholder groups and public improvement districts and chambers, TIF boards, you name it, to ensure that those groups where we identify as key places to put our kiosks are informed as a whole, and then the adjacent property owners are made aware. It is kind of hard to say, if I'm a property owner where one is going to be right in front of me, what is the direct benefit to me as the one right in front of me? Sure. But similar to like Waze app, that's interdependent on everyone putting in information for everyone else to see. The network of a kiosk down the street that points someone to your restaurant or your business is the network that it creates for everyone to grow successfully. So it is a bit of a challenge for you to say, as a property owner or a business owner of the one that's right in front of you, but when you kind of step back and understand, but the one down the street is actually beneficial for you and points people to where you are, that's how you connect that. That's how you create the interconnective web of the kiosk, and one supports the other, and one down the street supports your business. Maybe not the one right in front of you does, but the connectivity of them as a whole do.
That's great information, Randall. Thank you so much for that. We've got all kinds of folks that will be tuning in, listening to this. So we've got community stakeholders, all the things. What are some ways in which they can get behind this and support you?
Well, so there is a next public hearing on Monday. Okay. It will be at City Hall. Okay. If there is a pre-registration, but it's my understanding that all public hearings are open to anyone that wants to speak. And so if you just show up on Monday at City Hall at 6 p.m., you will be acknowledged for 1 minute as part of their presentation. And if more than anything, just become better educated through either city staff and what their intended goals are, or through a potential vendor such as myself. Again, the city went through an RFP process about a year ago. The RFP was issued, and when it was awarded, the RFP was awarded to a vendor, and At the last hour, the city, with a few stakeholder groups, wanted some more detailed information from the city on what the deployment, what the siting requirements would be, what the content would look like. And the city attorney made a determination that because the RFP was still open, that process, that the city could not engage the stakeholders to give them the information they requested. Wow. So unfortunately, to do that due diligence with the stakeholders, the city rescinded the RFP, rejected both offers that were extended, so that this timeline of stakeholder engagement could take place, and then take those concerns back to the RFP and back to the determining or the final contract. So it wasn't that the city had any concerns over the ability for any of the proposed vendors to do their job. The city wanted to ensure that public voices were heard, and although they were being reached out to by our firm, or the firm that I represent as a proposed vendor, some wanted to hear it directly from the city. And unfortunately, the city couldn't, based upon the city attorney's ruling, do that. And so right now, to your question, is the opportunity for anyone that wants to receive more information, to speak in favor of it, or to speak in opposition of it, they can come down this coming Monday, the 29th at 6 p.m. at City Hall, and speak to whatever their concerns are, or get clarification. I'll be there as well, and so I believe some other folks from our team will be there to just hear from us as a vendor what we're doing in other cities. I think it's one thing to talk about what we think and what we feel has happened or what will happen, right? But it's most important to know what actually has happened, and what examples and what facts are out there based upon our track record in other cities and what we've done with them, and the actual usage and the benefits to local businesses and the working relationships that we've had with Public Works here in Dallas. It's a little different in other departments across the country, but what has our working relationship been with them? How have we worked with them to cite these and to create that local content and to provide the revenue that we expect to do? What is our track record in it? And if it's a great track record, then it's a great track record. And if it's not, then it's not. And I think those are how the conversation should be shaped, not a fear-mongering tactic of, what happened 20 years ago is going to happen now, and or what I think will happen based upon the city's inability to do things or not do things, right? This is not, the city will not be, the city essentially is leasing out its right-of-way to a vendor to provide digital or interactive advertising kiosks. That's to the extent of what the city's involvement will be. And then the permitting process, of course. And then on the back end, any city-owned or local creative content that they would like to provide for us to be a part of that 8th slide, right? So the maintenance of them will not be a part of the city's doing. It's within our contract, and it's our track record across the United States in 17 cities that if one gets ran over, right, because that could happen, that we have to address it within 24 hours and come up with the game plan to remediate it within 48 hours. That's our track record across the United States, right? That's our proposed contract with the city of Dallas, right? And so these aren't things that I think would happen or I think can happen. These are things that I know are already happening and were going to happen as a part of this contract.
Awesome. So you've mentioned that you've done this in 17 other cities.
Correct.
If someone were interested in finding that data, where could they go to get that information?
So any city that we operate in, and there are a few cities that our specific product is not in. There are a few other cities that have a version of interactive kiosks in their cities. But a simple open records request to those individual cities. Houston is a great comparable city to Dallas as a whole, but also to what the proposed number of units would look like. And so a simple call or open records request to the city of Houston to ask them, How many impressions are they getting or interactions are they getting a month? What is the revenue that you're getting, right? And so, because for those that say that, you know, that a potential vendor would balk on the revenue, go ask people, go ask cities, are they getting paid, right? And that can kind of reduce what a lot of questions are and the fear tactics that's being used behind them, when you can actually go and get the factual data that supports the opposite position.
Sure. Okay. Well, Mr. Bryant, thank you so very much for being here.
Thank you.
Here on Strictly Business Unscripted. And this has been an amazing source of information for our community. So thank you once again. So we were here talking about the city's proposal, or the City of Dallas's staff proposal for digital kiosks, and wanted to get some perspective as to where some of our stakeholders stood on the matter. But again, my name is Keandra Jones. I'm the host of Strictly Business Unscripted. Thank you for tuning in. And here's a message from our sponsor, HCN. Again, I'm your host, Keandra Jones. Thank you for listening to the City of Dallas's digital kiosks. We want to hear from you. Where do you stand? Drop your comments below.